Welcome everyone to the last event to the ReVer Lab series. We are here, really leading to the KwaNTum final performance, open performance event. So before we start tonight's program, I would like to acknowledge that the Lewis Latimer House Museum is located in Flushing, Queens. I am standing in the museum right now in person. We are on the land of Matinecock, who are of the Algonquin people. They are the Aboriginal occupants of northwestern Long Island, among the first to feel the impact of European settlement and seldom mentioned after the colonial period. The Matinecock experienced profound changes after the 17th century. To learn more about the Matinecock Nation, we encourage you all to visit their website and Facebook page that we will share in the chat. I would also like to take a minute to introduce our museum. The Lewis Latimer House Museum was the home to Black inventor Lewis Latimer from 1903 to 1928 in Flushing, Queens. He contributed to modern technologies, including the early elevator system, bathroom and railroad cars, and the telephone, and most notably, the carbon filament light bulb that we are still benefiting from today, despite the versions that have evolved through time. We're here tonight for the open presence performance to the KwaNTum project and the ReVer Lab series. As part of Sherese Francis' poetic project, KwaNTum ReVer Lab is an invitation for participants to be a part of her research process over the course of several lab sessions and an open performance/collection. KwaNTum is a poetic project exploring concepts of knowledge and knowledge making through Afro-diasporic-centered research, looking at various Black and Afro-diasporic thinkers, writers, poets, and artists, as well as themes from STEM. Sherese has shared research findings and works in process, and is looking to invite you all participants to create their own response pieces over this fall. Our program tonight is made possible by the literary grant with the New York State Council on the Arts and Queens Council on the Arts. So this series has been call and response. And we've always invited participants to share any thoughts or any words that you've written at the end of each session so far. But this month's and tonight's program will be quite different. So Sherese will be performing some of her works, but you will also be able to sign up to share your words and responses as well. So in order to do that, we actually have our intern Farheen, who is helping us tonight to monitor the chat. So if you would like to perform at any point, please feel free to indicate through the chat. And so we can make sure to spotlight you and have you perform, and that we can all enjoy your words as well in tonight's program. So without further ado, I'll introduce our artist tonight. Sherese Francis is an alchemist of the imagination and expresses herself through poetry, interdisciplinary arts, workshop facilitation, editing, and literary curation. Her work takes inspiration from her Afro-Caribbean heritage, Barbados and Dominica, and studies in Afrofuturism and Black speculative arts, mythology, and etymology. Some of her work has been published in Furious Flower, Obsidian, Apex Magazine, Bon Bouquet, African Voices, and Newtown Literary. Additionally, Sherese has published 3 chapbooks, Lucy's Bone Scrolls, Variations on Settling Seedling, and Recycling a Why That Rules Over My Sacred Site. Without further ado, I'll now invite Sherese up to our stage.
Hello, everyone.
Recording in progress.
Oh.
So thank you for joining tonight for this open performance. Right now I'm carrying a bowl, and this is in honor of the character who's kind of influencing this entire lab series, Anansi, who's the spider trickster from the Ankan Ashanti culture. And one of the stories from Anansi is that he had a pot of wisdom that he accidentally dropped while trying to carry it up a tree, and all the wisdom scattered into rivers and was carried all across the world. So the poems I'm reading tonight are all in this, my own little pot of wisdom. And so tonight I will read a poem or two, and then I will invite you to respond either with your own work, or you can even take notes while I'm reading, and whatever lines or words call out to you, you can share in the chat or create your own response while I'm reading that you can share during the open mic. And I will then read again and then invite others to come and share and then read again. So it'll be kind of back and forth and thinking about how do we enter a space, and how in entering a space that interaction influences and changes us constantly and repeatedly. So let us begin. First poem, KwaNTum. Let there be light from an entangled verb. Reading anti-colonially is a deciphering practice, positioned as open, questioning method and methodology, are unhinged from the stasis of the noun and thrown to the less predictable work of the verb. The presence, like a new light imagined, like the force of gravity, gravitational pull of all time that has collected into itself, of all forces that push and pull on the body, that make and unmake it, until it vibrates with life, until it is a word out of the mouth, until it is light imagined. This body, objected, extracted, removed of its inner workings, only what others observed, refused of what it observes of itself, refused of what it feels, the vibration, the motion of power moving through this entangled body until it is light imagined. The active embodiment of the word and all of its vibrations. To turn, to transform, to respond, to watch, to witness, to reflect, to wear, to fashion, to costume the self, to carry, to hold up, to maintain. A question is to feel, the verb, the vibration, tonal shifts when the word is body, in another word. When reverb happens enough, it becomes itself, like God hearing itself clearly, the deep reflection, the of the entire frequency, the container of I writhing, trembling, troubling itself, a gathering of resonances. What does the word sound like within? The hum known, a mystery of internment manifests, put it together as and the living word made flow, made reflex, made verse. ReVer is learning to breathe again through research, resource, resurge, wandering around till you return back to yourself as a question, as an entering, like E equals N times and an infinity of the self made by division, by dispossession, by displacement, separation from a single containment, but twisted into an expansive entanglement. How much you are contained by what you are contained by what you become as you move across space and time. The mess, the mass, the weight of everything you carry surges, becomes source, becomes you as search engine, a computer ship, circling round and round until it becomes an expansion, roots of a diaspora, like Anansi's web, an entanglement of roots. Every shift embodies another way of knowing. Every ship has carried another way of knowing. Every ship together aging the spirit in its oscillation, its swinging back and forth of the surface of being. The word opens you into memory, memory, roaming, that deep listening, the dark abyss of the ship, where everything is sound, heard, and unheard. Enter. Next poem, called Filament. Dark universal connectivity, a scientific metapute. And the form of this poem is inspired by the scientific method. Observation. Lewis Latimer's filament as Black collective genius. Question. What happens when the source of the enlightenment is placed in an entanglement with the Black body of the filament? Research. Son of Black enslaved fugitives, Rebecca Latimer, George Latimer, devising a transnationalistic plan of escape from Virginia to Massachusetts. The deep study of maskering of escape, that knowing, beyond the confines of any institution, be it slavery, be it the plantation, devising plans like his mother, following his father in sweeping the cut threads from the head or hanging the beauty of patterns before the eyes. See the way breakages give you hidden dimensions of self, give you a definition beyond a current measurement. The more thread, the more filaments, the more entanglements, the more all possible distances, dispossessions, displacements can be measured. The deep study of maskering of escape, that knowing beyond knowing, be it a school that treated him like a captive. So instead he fabricates his own time, steers a universalism from below, immerses himself in the surfacing of memory, that the flow of water is like the flow of light, it's like the flow of sound. A navigation, a blues entry, a swimming into freedom. Its possession beyond possession can spread everywhere. Like a Black Moses crossing over from Axum, like this science, a question with an expansive sight. Drafts a compass from the watery depths of memory. A source, a searching, a surging of being, this entanglement of sound, like the drafting of Bell's telephone, drafting this dressing room in a state of transition. What if he drafted another form of the railroad? The future can always be heard from afar, can circle around to now, can become truth. Well, question, what is knowing? What is seeing? What sight does a captured being have? Hypothesis, the underground, drafting roots of transmission with a lineage of fugitivity. One has to be quick to comprehend the technologies common to the now. Good, spinning a thread, stringing together the unseen to pull yourself out of the labyrinth of slavery, to protect oneself from the detection of the master gaze. How do we put our future together? In what order? How does each element of time ordered become what is now? How do we see ourselves in our own light, understand the engineering of power, designing the patterns of the interior system, relations between resistance and conduction, prediction, son of a future fugitivity, seeing time beyond the expectation of what comes next, what comes before or nearby or the side, what comes in all possibilities of direction. Time becomes a relation of what is possible to know in all directions, the entanglements of the Enlightenment in the transatlantic, the entanglement of science and enslaved and trade and revolution. What these relations lead us to knowing. What is the cost of knowing? How has money and greed affected the possibilities of knowing? Is it possible to see clearly without these connections made? What other questions are found in the dark? The sweeping history, the role of the dispossessed in the making of the modern world. Who gets to be a scientist? Who gets to be an inventor? Who gets to make and remake the world? Who gets to be heard and who doesn't? Who gets to be seen and who doesn't? Experiment, filament, mapping the movement of the fugitive. Sailors, slaves, pirates, laborers, market women, indentured servants, all the underground, imagining freedom and equality, whose knowledge is credited and whose isn't. Not forward or backward, but swinging in any direction, a chaos theory of roots of science. Move in history like Grace Wisher weaving the American flag, weaving like Harriet Tubman navigating with the constellations in the sky, whose labor helped weave together what we see. What does their movements bending and expanding time and space in the making of a sight say? Weaving like Topsies just grew till it becomes light in the hands. The disentanglement from slavery to freedom. An algorithm or an English of a black hole. There are maps to the door of no return. Illuminated in Black consciousness, what is the algorithm of freedom? A Black geography entangled in another space and time, a shadow archive of fragments of organic life, a life yet lived, yet revealed, a mystery lost still looking for direction, a field of unrecognized underground connections. Is it possible to develop what lays in negation? To make another position out of the past, to observe what one is told cannot be. An expansion of entangled space, dense and dancing, heavy with the gravity of all it's been carrying, a presence with sensitivity enough to detect its energy and its distortion. Immerses in its own memory, its own structuring of its chaos, a mass of questions in the body wandering to find a place. And the door is rearranged, scattered, scatting, sings in tongues, twists and compresses into itself enough to be everything and nothing all at once, compresses into other angles, other forms, other dimensions, compresses till it no longer is object but being. Limboing under the crack of the door, bending the note backwards, bending like Sankofa, bending till past becoming, all properties become processed, reimagined. In this mouth in which we enter. The restructuring of what is seen and unseen, a remapping, a filament, this capturing, this concentrated mass of KwaNTum possibles. The primordial, the prime order, the concentrated mass, that of the unseen spinning energies around it, warping space and time, deprogramming and reprogramming the universe. The door of no return. A black hole's presence Western instruments cannot observe. An ergosphere, a draftsman spinning his blueprint. A moving workspace, frame dragging, warping time and space with its mass. Kwa, inco, do. Whose sight do we see? Whose sight do we value? Who was an inventor of themselves? Who fashioned themselves through their own wanderings? What resonates in the underexposed? What knowledge shines in the unlit? What gives light but the dark? How dark shapes the light? What knowledge is in the underexposure, the root worker of sight, cultivating a new circuitry? What in the ground holds the knowledge of what has been seen and what has not? So I'm going to take a moment and invite anyone if they would like to read before I read my next poem.
We have 4 signups actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so Farheen has helped us in gathering people that have signed up so far. So I believe Suzanne is going next.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can just make sure to spotlight Suzanne now. And we'll mute ourselves, so you can, please take us away.
All righty, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Suzanne Austin Hill, joining you from Ruskin, Florida. And so happy to be on the program with Sherese in such a safe and innovative poetry place that doubles as the Lewis Latimer Museum. And I am a former resident of Queens. I lived in St. Albans for quite a few years. I'd like to share with you a poem that came out of this workshop series called Modern Day Enlightenment. Eyes immediately drawn to the fluorescent quad tube light bulb in my desk lamp. Hair too long, it hurts. The discomfort is a reminder of progress, for it's the bulb's carbon filament invented and patented by Lewis Latimer, not Thomas Edison, doing the work. Pointed to the collective genius of African Americans, its light a retrospective equalizer. With it, things are seen as they really were and remain, unfair, inequitable. We are a riddle for long perplexed Europeans. The Academy asks, what is the cause of the sub-Saharan Africans' peculiar hair texture and dark skin? What they really want to know is, why are we Black? From free thinkers, empiricists, Barrère, Bernier, Montesquieu, Voltaire, Hume, Kant, and Hegel, varied non-scientific rhetorical responses spew forth under the guise of illumination, 18th century verbiage. We are Black because of blood, bile, and brain size, climate, decreased cognition, food, images presented to our expectant mothers, inferiority, laziness, no curiosity, pineal glands, semen, skin stained, unthinking, vapors, visual divergence. Add the blind observation, Africa has no light-worthy endeavors, and you have the original recipe for race. This proves powerful and profitable as we are perceived menial-minded merchandise. How are we perceived? Viewed, seen, unseen? Are we illusions, never to be understood? Quantum leaps of faith will personalize polarizing experiences. Quantum leaps of historical re-envision will transform trauma to triumph. Resolution. Racism is a social construct with no scientific bases to support observed biological differences. With these differences became tools of sustained supremacy and perpetual profit. Slavery became systemic. However, in the darkness of ignorance, when the brightest light of truth shines, the cockroaches of untruth scatter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was beautiful. So I'm going to come back to the open mic, and I'm going to read my next poem. Send the video back. So this next poem is inspired by Benjamin Banneker, called Banna. Banna, 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 ka, 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 this dream of drum writings of time, existence before the founding of the United States. Bana, 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 ka, 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 self-educated, self-theorized, self-historicized, self-evident, living a life of study and curiosity, living on his own method of living, cultivating the space of in-between, near what will be structured into the capital, near what will be structured into capital, capital, capital. Bana, 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 ka, 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 invention of a Black horologist, the deconstruction and reconstruction of the clock, the inner workings of time resonating. His name is a token of memory, repetition and binding of time in a small pocket of space. Bana, 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 ka, 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 timing of a sweet spot like beatbox operations. The name structures a past into a current being. The name and anatomy of time, Banaka holding time in his hands, dissecting each part, knowing it is his hands like a sculptor, carving the woods of trees into the functions of time, the replications of time. Bana, 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 ka, 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 like takorari, like kujenga, like come, pute, 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 puta, pull a piece out, put a piece in, shifting into different structures, the calculation of each teeth, each gear, and their relations. Bana, 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 ka, 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 what happens to time when it's lost in the mystery of a fire? Like a tree, the ground absorbs it. The ground takes its elements and rearranges, like the rifts and relations of a name. Bana, 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 ka, 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 Dogon, Malian, Senegalese, Wolo, Arabic, Nilo-Saharan, Bantu, to measure an architecture of what is observed, felt, perceived, a meditation on the intersections of otherness into possession. Bana, 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 ka, 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 Banake, the sweet place. Banuk, Banak, Ban, the sweetness of trunks, roots, flowers, stems, reeds. Banakas, Tanakas, what it means to belong to a place, to be positioned in time as a sacred sound space, as the sweet spot, as bana, 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 ka, ka, ka. 2. Banaka, conversations with Thomas Jefferson, the arc of an almanac. Transmission of time, many mood phases. Speak the motions of dialectics. One cannot measure intelligence by the illusion of the supremacy of only shade and not reflection. Each day building into a month, building into a year, into a century, into an age. Age spirits in the twists and turns of the rhythms of time. Locked within the hold of this drum of time, placing of the ink, where one is rooted and transported, shapes us. This self-evidence, this theory twists and turns. The arc of an almanac, all my inks, my countings, my calculations, all manat, my personhood, my mind, where I find my rest in the midst of all these twists and turnings, a record response to me calling, 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 calendar. Enter an expression of the rolling around the ocean of memories. How differently do I record the passing of time? Its cycles and rhythms of nature, its gears like an astrolabe, like taking and binding the stars together in the hands, like hearing the cicadas' codes as mine, a chorus of my passage through time. A call that remembers my grandfather's and father's passage of an African knowing to me. My inheritance, another form of time unrecorded in Western science, like Dogon and Mali, who could sense the Sirius star B without a telescope. some other sense to record the movements in space and time, some other direction to tell their questions to, tell the ways they have been broken open, tell the ways they are Mbanka, Nganga, this place to hold my callings, my truths, my instructing, my troublings, my ruins, my remains, my searchings. To make wood cry time by each way it is carved, marked, ruminated, digested, rewoven, bent to the possibility of what it can become. My reflection, my mouth, my mind, my hands moving at a frequency like a congregation, a gathering of a come, puta. The arc, motion tracking the ruins into calculations, constellations, into a fugitivity of time, before the founding of the structuring of this makeshift scattering into a sanctuary of observation, into my own capital, the measure of entering, the first shaping. So I'd like to call the next person who would like to read for the open mic.
I believe next would be Simone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am excited to be here. I love your poems, Sherese. I think they need to be in a book somewhere. And Suzanne, unfortunately, my computer went out right when you started, but I really look forward to somehow, coming back to what people are sharing. And so I didn't really have time to do something creative because I've been working on some other things, but I just thought I would share some of my thoughts, just talking. And so it's the piece of writing I wrote is called The 60s Sounding the Universe. Okay. So I just want to introduce myself again and say my name is Simone Johnson. And I'm an interdisciplinary artist, researcher, and cultural worker, mostly making work about water. I'm usually based in New York City, but I'm in Arizona right now.
Yeah, it's free.
And I would like to share a response to Sherese's lab, Synthesized Echoes, where we explored the following prompt. What does it mean to hear? How does sound and voice become more than noise, but technologies for meaning and communication? Looking at excerpts from selected texts about and listening to various Black originating music styles like jazz, hip hop, dub, blues, we will explore them as technologies of knowledge sharing and as forms of science. I also want to note, I can't turn on my camera because my camera is not working, but I'm here with my voice. So I just want to note that I'm approaching my response as a Black thinker. And as I said, I didn't have a lot of time to work on this, so I'm just sharing my initial thoughts and questions. So the 60s sounding the universe. I think every era has played a role in how Black people are able to live and how we're able to live and express ourselves today. And Sherese introduced the work of Milford Graves, Sounding the Universe. And immediately I noticed that I like this combination of words together, sounding the universe. It makes me think of world making, but through sound, song, music, voice, and chanting. I haven't delved completely into the 60s or Milford Graves' work, but I would just like to offer like my inquiry into how the sounds of the 60s, particularly among Black people like musicians, singers, artists, entertainers, activists, and surely scientists and inventors, any Black person really, sounding during this decade, how these folks help shape the world we live in today. So I feel like every part of the 60s sounding the universe can be meditated on. Like, for example, the 60s. What was going on during the 60s? Sounding. What mixture of sounds and voices were being heard and not heard during this time? And meditating on the universe and thinking about the spirituality or cosmic woo-woo aspects of this word. and also this combination of activism that so much characterizes the 60s, merging with the word universe, which could be seen as an odd combination or separate or unrelated, and maybe for other folks that this merging makes complete sense. And so I'm situating all of this in the US, but I'm equally interested in the 60s sounding the universe in Africa and throughout the diaspora, and using my imagination to visualize the various sounds and voices creating or adding to a universe. And also thinking about, how these sounds and voices are standing on the shoulders of, our ancestors. So it's like this long, deep time sounding and voicing. And finally, I've never done wordplay before, so I really like Sherese, how you're doing this word, how you're saying the words. I really love it. And so I wanted to experiment with sounding the universe. And immediately when I experimented, I made like an S sound, like the universe, like a snake. So I invite you all to say the universe and in the S with like a snake, universe. From this wordplay, I pull out the sounds and symbolisms of the snake. And I want to do more research on the role of the snake in Black American and African symbolisms and spiritualities, because I know different cultures see the snake in different ways. But I want to see how might the snake, the universe, fit into what I'm thinking about with music. And so, yeah, this is what I wanted to share. And if there's anyone who grew up in the 60s or you're familiar with the 60s, if you have any thoughts on the 60s sound in the universe. And thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Simone. I love it. I'm going to say universe. Okay, so I will read my next poem and then afterwards invite someone else to read. And so this next one was kind of inspired by Lewis L. Latimer's Ebon Venus, but thinking of his poem in relation to Sarah Bartman, Hottentot, who was also known as the Hottentot Venus, and another Sarah that I found out about named Sarah Maps Douglas, who loved to create drawings of flowers as well as study rocks and minerals. And so in addition to that, I was also inspired by Nina Simone's For Women. So I started creating a series of poems inspired by Nina Simone's For Women as well. So I created a poem that is kind of a conversation across space and time between Sarah Bartman, who is known as Hottentot Venus, and Sarah Maps Douglas. So this poem is called Aunt Sarah, the process of storage or place of exchange, or Sarah's pedagogical panorama. Microscopic ship, Black female things. Sarah's notes at the Gilbert Lyceum to a Museum of Humanity. Sarah Bartman. What can science having this body tell us in the future? Is the past? Is the display of my body really about the potential of science and what it can tell us? This body as a foundation for science? This anatomizing of a Black woman's body? Or is this observation a symbol, an object of fascination, a character of a colonial capital I helped weave into this entanglement? I do not represent myself except through translation and exploitation and explanation. This too written here is also an object of that fascination. Sarah Maps Douglas. Monograph. A writing or exhibition on the deep study of a specific subject by a single author or artist. Me,
I'm sad.
By nature around me, the environments that shape my presence here now. I say to act right, you must feel deeply. I feel this pen in my hand as I draw my observations, as if my body is a sensor for the motions of time. I am fascinated by flowers. When I was in New York, I once heard about the 16-year-old Khoi Khoi girl named Flora on display at one of P.T. Barnum's shows. Sarah. Click. Hear that sound? You know who made that sound? Maybe the river. I live near what is now called Gantus. Maybe my people. Who defines what it means to be human? I've also heard Nama, Damara, Orama, Gara, Haga. Every name given to me dismembers me. Click. Others hear my sounds as stammering, stuttering. San, 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 sand. I've been trying to give shape to what I know. When I was young, I used to gather the silt by the mouth of the river, hold it in my hands, kneading this pounded earth, it clinging between my fingers, try to turn it into something. Sarah. I'm fascinated by the earth and have theorized on it too. I've heard the names, mineralogy, geology, Cuvier, called the founding father of paleontology. I'm learning the capacity to hold, the layering of history in a body. I too know what it is like to hold some of the earth in my hands and try to shape it. Once I wrote in my private journals about forget-me-nots. Slavery was an abstracted terror in my readings and writings until it came knocking on my front door. So I gathered collections and attentions for the liberator. I am fascinated by the rhythms of those like my grandfather Cyrus, who founded their way to freedom. I am an observer of uprootings and replantings. Sarah. I've been gathering whatever pieces of myself I can find to remember into some timepiece this moment. Click. This small tortoise shell necklace from my mother before she left me. The image of my father herding cattle before he left me. I met Caesar and was hired to nurse his family. I lost mine. I am trying to remember those drummers' hands wrapped around mine, the sounds that filled my body, my womb now empty, my milk for another. I find myself imagining new attachments, new garments to clothe myself. Click. Sarah. Do you want to hear what I know about shells, rocks, minerals, fossils? Like our bones, the ground will remember in its own ways. Shells and minerals well arranged and labeled in this my own cabinet of curiosity. Like this mind of mine richly furnished with a knowledge beyond these sciences. Do you know about lithodomes? About mollusk compressed bodies that make their home in limestone? I've hidden my works, this language of flowers, between covers of albums, sealed in envelopes of private letters, stored in attics and archives, in names like Zilla and Sophonsilla. My mother has invited me to teach at her school, founded with a sailmaker named Fortune. I'm still trying to give a name to all the ways this body of mine has been compressed. All the arrangements of these workings within me, these workings carrying me away to something else. Sarah. What parts of me can I keep private? Men have always been curious of my mind, of my body, so much so I've been fossilized, dissected and pickled in jars. Cuvier, remember, so-called foundation of anatomy. These lithographs ridicule my form. I am opened up by time, made to receive another's compression, an empty vessel for others' placements, as if I wasn't holding histories in me already, as if I didn't draw my own observations of my anatomy while dancing my feet on the ground, of my homeland, of these stages, each move I make, a printing, a cultivation of my body's intelligence. Click. Sarah. To gaze at a flower is not to see it, a love that is surface only, your reflection in its nature, your desire for sweetness, for beauty, for some sense of click, normal at her expense. A body withering from neglect. Do you hear that sound? The wail of a captive somewhere in the cloudiness, lurking at the shore of this rose-colored happiness. My feelings on the subject has found a weak point, has opened me up to a hypothesis, what's under skin to what's underground. I am accounting for something deeper, a pain we are all carrying. Sarah. The foundation of the sympathy is the same as the roots of that pathology, roots of all our suffering. Click, Hottentot, Hottentot, an entanglement hung up on display. A monster of nature, an object of fascination, a net to catch attraction and repulsion. Freak show named Hottentot.
There's something to drink. Sorry, these are what we have. Do you want to take a pause for now? We can ask someone else to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, everyone. It happens sometimes. I also have had this issue since I've gotten COVID. I'm sorry, that's like the only drink we have. We do not have any water with us. Hopefully that will help you feel better. In the meantime, I know that Francie is the next person who is supposed to perform. So I'm not sure if Francie, you feel ready. We'll now invite you.
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll go ahead and make sure to spotlight you. Farheen, would you be able to help us with that?
I'm great. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
I pinned them. Are you able to see the pin? Or is it just
Whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
I think that we have you down now. You're joined through your phone, correct?
I'm ready whenever you're ready.
Okay, so we are ready now, and I'll pass it on to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, it's great to be with you. I wanted to step back 34 years ago, this very week, namely yesterday. I had the privilege and pleasure of being a member of the Committee to Save Latimer House. And indeed, on a snowy day, the Latimer House was uprooted and replanted where it now sits on the north side of Northern Boulevard, less than 2 blocks away from Flushing High School, where Lewis Latimer's grandson became the first African-American principal of a high school in the history of New York State. So this is a big week in the history of the Latimer family. In honor of the fact that we've got soccer happening throughout the globe at the moment, I have the pleasure of reading a poem I wrote that was published and that was chosen as the first honorable mention statewide in the 2016 Queen's Library competition for poetry that had to focus on sports because that year was indeed the Olympic summer ongoing. So here we go. Player's Prayer. Yo, shot put picadiller of pond placements. Yo, race walker, outpacing the rapid to heel and toe triumphs. Yo, would-be shadow blade runner past the baton. Yo, racquetball walled fortress of fire, unleash that furl of fabulous furor. Yo, backsplashing butterflies sliding, airbrush time tyrant of water pool palaces. Yo, archer with more targets than buzzhead bows can magnet bullseye, one for ages by past and centuries yet imagined. Yo, tennis player sizzle slice serves that punctuate the fault lines of your opponent's baseline blues. Yo, golfer on the bunker for the birdie hole in 1, 2. Yo, hoop master, drop it like it's hot until it's not, and drape your dreams with the net of gods. Yo, drive a machine, blast your lungs with the oxygen of eternity. Count your blessings and catapult, dive daring destiny. Yo, cyclist, burn the road ahead of you with the steel of your drive and the buoyancy of your foot speed gyration. Yo, boxer, deflect, distract, drive, punch when and where it matters, till your spar mate is embroidered in the ropes. Yo, badminton ballerina, first break 30 and keep frying those half-moon eggs in the sky. Yo, fencer, take a slide, foible a thrust, do what you must, but first flaunt ferocious fearlessness. Yo, all, blow a kiss to the boys of summer, the poloist tug of warfarers of yesterday, no longer reckoned contenders. Yo, all in our, my game. Play bold, beautiful, bountiful. Love the finish line. Thank you.
It was beautiful. It really was.
Thank you so much. Francie, we would love it if you can share that poem with us through email too. That was incredible.
Yes,
Yes, I'm delighted to do it. It's already been published and I will. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
you.
Thank you, Francine. That was a beautiful reading. I love all the sounds you made while reading.
Inspired by you, Sherese. Thank you.
I apologize, everyone, for the interruption. An itch came up in my throat, so.
Before we continue, there was a question about your last poem, about the name of it. So if you can please share it again.
This poem, the Sarah poem I'm reading.
The last poem that you were reading.
Oh, yeah,
About
Sarah.
the Sarah.
Yes.
This one, its name is Aunt Sarah. The process of storage or place of exchange, or Sarah's pedagogical panorama.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So I'll just read from the section that I was reading before I was interrupted by the itch in my throat. So Sarah. The foundation of this sympathy is the same as the roots of that pathology, roots of all our suffering. Click, Hottentot, hot tin-tin-tot, an entanglement hung up on display, a monster of nature, an object of fascination, a net to catch attraction and repulsion. A freak show named Hot Tin-Tin-Tin-Tot, swinging these beads and feathers around me like something beyond this nature. Objectified oracle for sapient animalism. I respond to commands of attraction and repulsion, an oscillation on a field of normal, like these swinging beads and feathers. Hanging from my body a function of scaring away the, do you hear that sound? The heaviness of gravity. You can't lead us. Why not? Play our game, they say. So I be, beauty of speech, click of the tongue, time dissected, an optical phenomenon presented to you by the showman Caesar and the ship surgeon Dunlop. Attention and anatomy and the performance of body. Transported in a query, a reconstruction like I once heard of an ancient river craft written as, come, keep top. Sarah. With this cabinet of curiosity, I too am a naturalist. I am fascinated by nature around me. I know the function of the tools to examine these specimens in my grasp, to familiarize myself with technical language, minerals cleavage, the tendency to break along smooth planes. The point of weakness where a structure breaks. Instrument for mineral analysis, I am familiarizing myself with an instrument of breakage. Another one, goniometer, a device that measures an angle or permits the rotation of an object to a definition, to a position, measures the directions and intersections of normal, measures the locations along the field of normal, measures the landscape to locate specimens to gather together, measures the angles between points of visibility, measures the spatial distribution of what's visible to the human eye, measures the angles between faces of a crossing, measures the range of motion at a joint, measures one's ability to move, measures how severe the injury, measures the internal twisting and turnings of the body that reveals itself on the body, measures the angle at which to cut, to understand all the ways cutting is possible, the angle of a blade, like how to unhinge oneself from the skeletal display, to show that something supposedly immobile when moved, moves within the fracturing of light, like surface science, what changes in the contact, that tension that now exists, attraction, repulsion, demonstration, definition. Sarah, arriving from the interior of Africa, I'm flattened to this definition, Bushman. The smooth plane of the hospital stage is where I am crossed over, capital circulation masquerading as scientific interest, transported to Piccadilly Circus, circulation punctured. Picado, sustaquaquaquaquado, the large collar of classification around the neck, the clinging dirt of passerbys and onlookers, the iron hand stretched forth to seize me, as his prey, as his definition, as civilized. Intricate cuttings formed into character prints, the magnification of the behind's enormous size. I am fabricated as blue comedy, as Dada art, as artificial intelligence covering up the body by warping it into capital circulation, into colonial dismemberment of lineage, contracted into display. I am a spectacle picked and poked at with walking sticks, with fingers. Am I a fabrication, a foundation of a digital reproduction? Am I a body as the definition of a first human? What remains for buried? Skeletal, skull, scriptings of genetics on Cuvier's display. But the organ of my mouth is missing by a white man heading an African institution. I am translated to a query by Macaulay's liberal patronizing of a trafficked body. When he has his iron hands around Africa's neck, when his hands kneaded it into currency by a large system hidden under the screen of curiosity, an erotic projection, missing link between man and beast. And I, like all of your animal specimens, I needed to eat to live. How is this body translated, warped into capital, bustled into this mass produced, I've come to take you home? Still is in a political negotiation. I am contained in another's theorizing. I am positioned to center focus on what's behind the enormous mass I carry. Sarah. The cause of the enslaved has become my own. I perform as token in a medical institution to learn anatomy, physiology, the female form. I am still navigating the entanglement between survival, agency, respectability, a definition of objectification. Look here at this specimen, I know they will say. I do not see my form in their books, so I improvise. I look at myself. I familiarize myself with my aged spirits oscillating back and forth within my own container. I hear about the name Cuvier in my studies, his menagerie of interpretations of what remains. Interpreting what's between my legs, an object of fascination, theorizes this body as close to apes to codify a hierarchy of races. He doesn't believe in evolution. You are what you are, he says. My ears are not an instrument he is familiar with. My movements are a measurement he can't understand, a quickening process like a signifying monkey. I read in a record he once wrote, a woman like me was intelligent, with an excellent memory, a flowing tongue, a back and arms and feet and hands that were full of grace. I would have said, playing the twisting instrument in my mouth, it's all from learning how to carry an enormous mass behind you. Sarah. The name of the specimen of a flower is also the name of a scientist. We are carried within a query. Where you transition is where I begin. Love is the recognition of the sharing of this entanglement, the truth breathing the same air and atmosphere that shaped us both. Something old, something far, far back, some door to return to. Am I not your sister? Your name, my name, a token of love from me to thee. Black butterfly on the edge of a twig, the suspension of our current being, anticipating the motion to somewhere else. Like the tips of our fingers, our feet, our bodies, We have arranged ourselves into a beauty of flight. These wings behind us flash a color of some other name. Our pen illustrates an image of ourselves unclassified. We wander around searching to belong, to be seen in ways we have not been. When a flower droops its head towards the ground, the only way to discern its inner beauties, its angularities, its instrumentation is to look beyond the eye of the spectator. That's the end of that poem. And I would like to invite the next person to read for the overview.
I believe Black Cowrie is next. If you can hear us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I hope you all can hear me. I am so appreciative of this event. I was able to go to the first session, and now to be able to see the culmination is an honor. I'm going to read you two poems. One is I wanted to take up Sherese's challenge of possibly doing a free write while Sherese was reading. So we're going to get that level of discombobulation coming at you. And then I'm going to read you a poem that has met revision in its life. So the free write. Tap, tap, tap waits impatient lens. As I wink, wink a blink from the spotlight at my temples, knees widen like 2 points of like attraction. I shimmy my no longer skinny, working a twerk that still remembers how to jerk. Of a weak spot for saxophones is just to the right or left of my hips, where maple does indeed drip to thick glugs down my thigh. To thine be the glory, delivered by sun, formed by a sigh. Vessels of soul's perfection in ramshackle decline. But one wail formed from brass and spit silences reveries, and suddenly I am a brass button, waiting on pat and press, born of hot breath and spit, and echoes released. I'm a torso's brag of solar flares and thirst, trained to be a good girl, now prone to subject myself to the worst. Am I crying or lying or dying or writhing, or just a bleep of an elephant's burst? Make me bend my quick curves over hot notes that flow slow. It's oils, silk over the leather that yet lurks in these holes. Emblematic of rivers coursing new ground of ocean, creviced in each blink of moon, and see how root bears burden proudly. Support from the stem, hosannas from ancestors 6 generations strong. It helps me navigate other streams like buffers or bumper cars. Its temperatures tell me when a topic is too hot or the other has run cold. We teach others how to treat us, whether we're paying attention or not. I feel into the field and learn how to navigate the you and we while carrying I and I and I and I. Shall I push here? Does she need me to back away? Affirm, say, you are okay. It is safe here. And what is this thought? This picture, this blooming of energy, what is this flower? What to make of its fragrance? Or am I just imposing scent? Intuition demands trust. Intuition reminds, you don't have all the information that you couldn't possibly hold. Yes, even of a dream. Okay, so let's get to a poem that's seen revision. It's called Wengechi's Mutu's You Are My Sunshine. Or after Wengechi Mutu's visual work that she has called You Are My Sunshine. This is my reaction or response to that art. Mangoes, hairy and teardropped, first thrust seed into cowrie shell, into ropes of crystals blossoming third eye ribbon from root to crown. Can you peek inside starlight? 'Tis the eternal integration, for me. A duo of flesh circuits and yin-yang octaves, feeding semaphores, coding new dawns, riding effluence of abundance gripped and ring caress. Only we enter here, we who carry the illuminations of ancestors, of backs of ever shed reptilia, of germ and ego, fruit. One in open kiss, eye on Judah, other floating a snail's husk, temple cupping reverence left alongside a cheekbone's waterfall. Sunflowers stalk moments like these, of lilies reaching necks like sea foam, so the moths one's shoulders remain. Conjoined eights configured to circle, blood broken from halo to feather to seashell, like acorns awning wings. Twixt such twists of newly turned soil, branches root leaf and welcome. That is, if and only if one has the proper roads to hear. Thank you for letting me take that time.
Thank you, Black Calorie. It's always a joy to hear your read, and your choice of words is always nice. So I'm going to end my reading with this last poem that's inspired by Harriet Tubman. And part of the inspiration from this poem is thinking about Harriet Tubman's alleged ancestry from the Ashanti Ankan people. So there will be several phrases from the Adinkra symbols that I include in this poem. And then after I read this poem, I invite anyone else who signed up for the open mic to read, and then we'll finish out with any comments, responses, questions to end the night with. We were always scientists. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going. A collective Black genius commonly attributed to Harriet Tubman. Observation. I am called Black Moses, Black Promethean stealing data. Question. Harriet Tubman, Black naturalist, alchemist of freedom. Who gets to be a scientist outside of the established Western title? What was the name of a scientist before this name spoken? Research. Maryland and Ankin Asante. The distance doesn't seem so far when I can echo to locate with my mouth. Ananse etonton, a spider web? Or is it dame dame, a checkered game? Or is it enkimyu, the grid work made before a cloth is imprinted? Or is it denkem, a crocodile who lives in land and water? Or is it hoemuda, a measuring stick? Or is it inyan sapo, a knot of wisdom, the ability to tie two ends together? Or is it matemasi, what I hear, I keep, I understand? Or is it nea onim no sua a ohu, what I don't know, I can learn? My entire life has been a question, a quest to know that taste of freedom, to move towards a past tense in the future. It will have already happened. There's also a future even in the past tense. What was I going to be? Hypothesis. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Like Sankofa, my question is my return. Roots pulling at my feet, each step rising out of an entanglement. Faces of my people etched in the textures of my fabrications. Predictions. I am a fugitive. I am a spy. I am a cook. I am a nurse. I am a root worker. I am a reader of the stars. What has made me a scientist? My mama, Harriet Green, she a cook too. My daddy, Benjamin Ross, he a woodsman. what makes them scientists. To know the inner workings of a plant, know its potential to be something else. To know the inner workings of an enslaved body and its potentials to be something else. To feed the mind is to feed the body. To give it the nourishment, the remedy it needs. To know the body and how to transform it into something else, like who birthed me. My mouth is a bender of trees like the wind blowing, like a feather on the edge of a deep chasm. Experiment. Sesa wo suban. My sadness sits around me. I have had to spin the gravities around me to recognize I am a carrier of the motion of life, to recognize I can exchange those motions for other motions, to find some balance beyond this planting of my feet here, to move this form across time and space, to feel my completeness throughout time and space. I have dressed myself like the old woman. Like the old woman sweeping sands of time around her body, like the old woman wandering the streets for information, like the old woman who wanted to know how to get to freedom, like the old woman who learned it's all about timing, like the old woman who made herself invisible to gather knowledge from the ground, like the old woman who could read the science of the skin, the recordings of the shiftings of skin, like the stick fighting dance of Kalinda, like the skin of the drum marked by drumsticks, each mark a measure of some kind of knowing. Like the old woman who overheard what the strangeness within herself meant. In the woods and waterways, I could concoct an entire library of knowings. Resources like acorn, water lilies, cranesbill, sassafras, black cherry, pawpaw, and poppies. Hear the bell of the seasons and the callings of the whippoorwills. Understanding. Okeame Poma, the staff of an advisor. How do I perceive what I see? Analyzing the ground, what's under the ground, the processes that form one into being, rooting back and forth in movement, this back and forth movement allowing other futures to exist, because freedom is not linear, but a cyclical process of understanding. The systematic conditions that produce both social sickness and the cultivation of medicine, of food, of space for liberation. Kwa, 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 engo. As a captured being, what message have I received? We are a beauty of our own logic, rising rhythmically constant out of the depths of a wild fugitivity. We have always been thinkers, schemers, planners, and dreamers, building a bridge, engineering a future, without knowing the so-called master languages, because we have our own. We know a language beyond theirs, like reading the Big Dipper and North Star, following the drinking mother gourd to find my other ground. We too are like constellations. We too hear the ground and we keep it. We orient ourselves through its layered history of connections. I ask of you to plant your feet on the ground and orient yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherese. We do have one more person that signed out. I believe Irene, yes, you are next. So let us welcome you onto this virtual stage.
Irene, take it away.
And I believe you're muted right now. Just make sure you are sound on.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much. My name is Irene Brown, coming to you from Queens Village, New York, and I am so very honored to be amongst all you seasoned writers. Wow, what a blessing for me and an honor. Thank you so much. And I am gonna let you know up front that I am a very um very new to poetry writing, and my inspirations just seem to flow at times. So I thank you for allowing me to I thank you for allowing me to use this as a platform. My first poem was inspired as I was watching the news and while I was on Facebook at the same time. And the title is Black Man, You Are Loved. So Facebook, you ask what's on my mind? As I sit here saddened by the funeral of George Floyd, I ponder upon the fact that not only is this an eye-opening tragedy for the world, but it should also be one for some of us Black women, and I stress, some of us, whom seem to only be able to tear down and rip apart many of our Black men. Okay, yes, it goes both ways, but that's another day of what's on my mind. Years of being told not to shed a tear, when their souls sometimes cry out for help. They may not have a mother to comfort them as one should, so they look for us to support and sometimes guidance if we could. But all we seem to do is hang that verbal noose around their necks, and we wonder and wonder, why do they disrespect? I once spoke to a young Black man who had just graduated from high school. He said he was glad he made it this far, but now felt like he had been thrown out to the wolves. Imagine that. It resonated in me because that's pretty much how it would be. Chased by women looking for baby daddies, then telling those same babies how awful their daddies are. Being torn down in the household only to anticipate being persecuted in society where they never seem to be good enough. When being told, be a man, while shaking in their boots. Yeah, they're scared. Wouldn't you be too? Put yourself in their shoes. Have a little empathy. They'll never be perfect, but neither will we. As Black women, we have been fortunate enough to climb that social ladder and have progressed to a point where we can hold our own most of the time, but don't throw it in their face. I don't need you. Yes, you do. We all need to feel needed by someone, all of us. So when you see that Black man or boy, wherever and whenever, whether he's doing as good or not as good as we would hope he would, say something uplifting just to help him cope. Unconditional love, isn't that what God has for us? You may be the only one to plant that seed of desire and of trust to make him want to do better. Yes, Black man, you are loved. Thank you. That's my first, and I have one more poem to share. And the title is anybody there? Is anybody there? Is anybody there? Sometimes I feel so low, I can hardly pray for myself. but nobody's here. Jesus, pray for me. Is anybody there? Is anybody there? I need help for things to be better, but nobody's here. Jesus, pray for me. Is anybody there? Is anybody there? What do I do? Where do I start? But nobody's here. Jesus, please pray for me. Is anybody there? Is anybody there? I cry myself to sleep at times because nobody's here. Jesus, please pray for me. Is anybody there? Is anybody there? We did it. We won the victory. But nobody's here. Jesus, you prayed for me. Thank you. And God bless you all.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you for entering the space with us and sharing with us your work. Please do keep writing. And thank you all for, is that the final person?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. So thank you all so much for joining tonight and listening to me, as well as sharing your work in this collective space and this collective entering. If anyone has any final comments or responses you would like to share, please feel free to unmute or even share it in the chat if you like.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all. That was beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
just want to thank you all. You did a fabulous job.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes.
You as well.
Let me put us in
Thank you.
so we can see each other actually. This is great. Yes, so we're all here in the same.
Yeah.
I just want to give a round of applause for each of you. And yes, thank you all so much for your writings, your thoughts, every word. I'm holding on to that, and just know everything that you shared tonight is recorded. So if you want to revisit or revisit other people's poems or thoughts, we will send you that link so you can see it again. You can relive it again, And I shared this in the chat already, but in case you are joining us through phone and you cannot read the chat, just know we would love to have, even if you didn't share tonight, right? Like if you did write something, we would love to have a version of it that you were willing to share with us. So, you can send it to my email, so Roxy, and my email is program@lewislatimerhouse.org. If you sign up through Eventbrite, that's where we will be sending out the YouTube link, and I believe Sherese will be sharing her poems with folks through PDF.
Sure.
Or maybe if you made it available at any point.
Yeah, I'm working on the collection KwaNTum right now, but if you have a poem that you enjoyed and want to read it in written down for, let me know as well.
So we can, maybe I'll share it. Yeah, I'll share your Sherese's email as well with you also, that everyone can be in touch with her personally, and we will always love to hear your feedback if you have any. So thank you all again. I won't keep us for any longer. We are at 7:32. So have a great night, and thank you again for showing support for KwaNTum and the Revergence Lab series, and to Sherese and all of you, each of you. It's been wonderful.
Congratulations, Sherese. Congratulations.
Thank you for being part of this experience. It's a new experience for me, and hopefully I can continue again with it next year in some form. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all. Congratulations.
Cheers.
All right, happy
Yes.
holidays.